The one leaning against my husband as if they were lovers is my sister.
Forgive me, sis. I've finally met my destiny.
We met too late.
The two of them were getting excited. Then, my son arrived home. My husband firmly holds on to staggering her. My son witnessed this worst-case situation. What is this? Like a daytime soap opera?
She's the one I'm destined to be with. Divorce me and leave.
What on earth? Was this the premonition of unease I had? My name is Natasha. I'm 47 years old. It's just my husband, my son, and me in our family. Ian, my son, graduated from vocational school this year and started working. He got out into the world. And I, too, transitioned from being a part-time worker to a full-time employee at the company where I've worked for many years. Thankfully, I was offered this opportunity once things settled down with raising my child. I love my job, and my coworkers are all wonderful people. I'm very happy that my salary has increased. However, my working hours have become a bit longer than before.
So, does that mean you're asking me to help with the housework?
He put on an unhappy look on his face. I didn't say help. I just asked you to wash your own lunchbox. I had been working part-time from morning till evening, while also preparing meals, making lunches, cleaning the bath, and doing all sorts of other household chores for as long as I could remember. I thought it was just the norm. But yesterday, something struck me. After my son returned home from work, he washed his own lunchbox. It was like a bolt from the blue. Of course, that's how it should be. I felt confident in my success as a parent. At the same time, I was shocked by the reality of having neglected my husband, who did nothing. It was my fault for doing everything for him. It can't be helped, I thought, but my son, who had lived in the same environment, washed his own lunchbox. That means it's not my fault. It's my inconsiderate husband's fault. However, kindness isn't something forced upon someone. Could you at least wash your lunchbox on days when you come home late? I said it very hesitantly and politely. And yet, despite being so humble, that discontented expression, not even a trace of kindness, let alone consideration. This person must surely think of me as some kind of maid or something.
So you became a full-time employee without consulting me, and now you don't want to do housework, huh? You've become quite high and mighty.
His tone was irritating. I didn't say I don't want to do housework. Besides, I did discuss it with you. And when I mentioned the raise, you were happy too.
Did I really say something like that?
I feel foolish for waking up early every day to pack a lunch for him. Can't he imagine the stress of seeing unwashed lunchboxes from the previous day sitting in the sink? My husband lets out an exaggerated sigh.
Just buy another lunchbox. You can use them alternately.
Hearing that, I slump my shoulders in disappointment. It seems he has no intention whatsoever of washing them. The next day, I received a rare call on my phone.
Hello, sis. It's been a while.
Emily? What's going on? It was my sister, Emily. When she was 20, she worked at a company introduced by our parents, but suddenly,
I can't fit into this big country. I'm leaving,
she said, slamming her resignation letter onto her boss's desk, and fled overseas. I don't know what triggered her. maybe it was something she saw on TV the day before. She's an extraordinary person, but she's always been like this. I vividly remember the sight of our exhausted parents apologizing to the company she inconvenienced. After traveling around the world, she ended up marrying a Brazilian man. I was always amazed by her proactive and curious nature since childhood, but I never expected her to enter into an international marriage. Moreover, without any prior consultation, she announced her marriage with just one phone call, leaving the entire family stunned. After that, she returned home only once to attend my wedding, and there was hardly any contact. I mostly relied on her social media updates to make sure she was still alive. Then, I moved to another state, had a son, and kept busy, so I was mostly just thinking, as long as she's alive and well, that's good enough. For my sister to contact me out of the blue after such a long time, what could have happened? Is it a major event? Or just a whim? I braced myself, but the conversation topic exceeded my imagination.
I'm getting a divorce.
Huh? Divorce?
I'm coming back to America.
What? My sister had been living a luxurious life in a mansion with her Brazilian businessman husband. She had access to a pool, sauna, and even had maids, living a life of luxury that many envied.
The paperwork is finally done, so I'm flying back tomorrow. Sis, could you pick me up at the airport in the evening?
Huh? Even if you suddenly ask me something like that.
Please.
I have work.
Your sister is coming back home after such a long time, and you're prioritizing work?
But it's too sudden.
Please, big sis.
Big sis. A nostalgic way of addressing me. Come to think of it, my sister has always called me that. It's unfair, but when your sister asks for something, you can't help but want to help her. Okay, I'll figure something out.
Yay. By the way, can I stay at your house for a while?
Well, I guess so.
Yay. Thank you, big sis.
Even though I agreed to help, I have an important meeting scheduled for tomorrow. It's a hassle to rearrange my plans. I was pondering over this when my husband returned from work. I decided to give it a shot and ask him, and surprisingly, he immediately agreed. I appreciate it, thank you. But can you take the day off?
I have nothing important tomorrow, so it's no problem.
That's a relief. I was worried whether my husband remembered my sister's face since we hadn't seen her since the wedding.
It'll be fine. Your sister is flashy and stands out.
Though I didn't deny it, his way of putting it was harsh. I suddenly wondered if it would be okay to leave my husband and sister alone together. It's about a 1-hour drive from the airport to our home. Let's imagine it. My sister, the epitome of a party animal, causes a ruckus in the car, while my husband lectures her in a self-important manner. They're definitely not compatible. I can't shake the feeling that trouble is brewing. Hey. Please be kind to Emily.
Huh? What's that supposed to mean? I'll drive safely, don't worry.
That's not what I meant. Just get along, okay?
I understand.
I've made my point, but what is this feeling of unease? That night, my son came home and washed his lunchbox. Without a word of complaint, he also washed my husband's. As I watched him quietly, I couldn't help but think. Whoever becomes his wife will be a lucky person. it's natural to want to spend the rest of your life with the person you married. Even if it's a stubborn husband who won't even wash his own lunchbox, he's the person you chose. The words we vowed at our wedding, sharing joy and sorrow equally, weren't they a promise to be equal? We were supposed to be soulmates. We got married with confidence in our happiness. Both me and my sister were supposed to have that. How deep must the scars of divorce be? But there's no use getting depressed thinking about it. I need to change my mindset. When my sister comes back, I'll listen to her story a lot. I'll support her so she can live comfortably.
What's wrong, Mom? Are you lost in thought?
My son, noticing my contemplative mood, asked curiously. Come to think of it, he has never met my sister. I should talk to him beforehand so he won't be surprised by her unique personality when they meet for the first time. I thought about telling my husband too, but no matter how many times I called him, he was absorbed in his game, holed up in his room. He really is a selfish person. Hey, you know, Mom's sister is coming back from Brazil tomorrow. My son listened intently to my long story, looking intrigued. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. The next evening, I rushed out of the office on time. I bought my sister's favorite lasagna at the supermarket and hurried home. By the time dinner was ready, my husband's car, with my sister inside, had arrived. Welcome back. I went to the front door to greet her. My sister, carrying a large suitcase, and my husband, holding her shoulders. Huh? What's going on? Why is he holding her like that? On closer look, I noticed that my sister also had her arm around my husband's waist. Even though she's just returned from Brazil, this level of physical contact is too much.
It's been a while. I've missed you, big sis.
It seems like my sister isn't bothered by anything. Hey, why are you two so close together? I asked, feeling bewildered, and my husband responded with a look of disbelief.
You're the one who told us to get along.
I did, but isn't this going too far?
There's nothing wrong with it.
Huh?
That's right, it's natural.
Are you kidding? Feeling increasingly uncomfortable with their closeness, I couldn't help but feel displeased.
We're not kidding. You wouldn't understand our feelings, would you?
Huh?
I finally found my soulmate.
My husband's eyes sparkled. What are you talking about? That's my sister, Emily.
Emily. Yes, Emily.
What is it, George?
My sister called my husband's name in a sweet voice.
I wish we had met sooner. We wasted so much time not loving each other.
It's okay, George. We still have time to make up for it.
I watched this ridiculous charade in silence. You two have already met once at my wedding, and you even exchanged greetings back then. Okay, is this a prank? Or are you rehearsing for a musical? Can you just stop? I said it in disbelief.
It's your fault in the first place.
A sudden accusation.
If it weren't for you, we could have met much sooner.
Huh?
Today, when I saw Emily shining in the crowd at the airport, it was like being struck by lightning.
Me too. It was love at first sight when our eyes met. I felt weak in the knees.
Seriously. I sighed. Cut it out. This is ridiculous.
What?
Ian will be home soon. Let's not make a scene.
Are you trying to separate us?
It's a total joke. How did it come to this?
Come on, sis. Don't be jealous just because George chose me.
I didn't even bother to respond. Just stop it already.
You're right. Let's stop this nonsense. And let's start our happy future together.
George, you're amazing.
What am I watching here? Hey, what's going on with you two?
I've been telling you, it's destiny.
That's right.
Could it be that these two? I suddenly realized something. Was this what my intuition was warning me about? They're both prone to strong beliefs and easily get carried away. There's a possibility they're misunderstanding something. Hey, both of you. Please, calm down and listen.
Whatever you say, my mind won't change.
That's not it. There's something I need to clarify. When I said that, my son came home.
I'm home.
My heart raced. I didn't want my son to see the two of them being so close. Thinking that, I instinctively pulled my sister's arm.
Ouch.
My husband firmly embraced her as she stumbled. My son witnessed this worst-case situation. Oh, what is this soap opera-like situation?
Nice to meet you, Auntie. What's going on?
My husband answered my son's bewildered question.
Ian, did you see that? It's terrible, isn't it?
See what?
I can't be with a woman who does violence just because she doesn't like it.
What do you mean?
She's the one I'm destined to be with. You need to divorce me and leave now.
I was speechless. This wasn't something to joke about.
Don't worry, sis.
My sister, still clinging to my husband, said triumphantly. Hearing this, my son burst into laughter.
Ha ha ha. Stop it, Dad. Ha ha ha.
I couldn't help but join in, unable to hold back any longer. Ah ha ha ha.
Huh, Dad, what are you saying? You can't just get divorced, right?
My husband, unable to understand why we were laughing, got angry.
What's so funny?
My sister seemed to be in a bad mood too.
Your son is such a weirdo.
She glared at him. Whether you're serious or not, just listen to me first.
No way. Leave us alone.
She covered her ears with both hands and shook her head. Like a tragic heroine.
Come on, George, let's go. I don't want to be here anymore.
My sister, clinging to my husband's arm, said abruptly, and they both left. My son spoke to me as I stood still.
Mom, are you okay?
I knew I should stop them or chase after them, but even without doing so, they would probably come back soon. However, being told to divorce and leave like that was not something I could easily forgive. Well, what should I do now? Several hours later, late into the night, my husband returned home alone. I was wondering what the first word he would say.
You deceived me.
He said with an angry red face.
Things aren't as you told me.
My son and I were dumbfounded. Deceived? Things aren't as I told? What is he talking about? It seemed like wild accusations. What I told my son last night. You probably weren't listening because you were so obsessed with your game. My sister was living a luxurious life in a mansion in Brazil. That's because she had a wealthy husband. This is my sister Emily that my husband knows. Her husband was domineering and often turned his anger on her. He was controlling and selfish, causing arguments every day. While the luxurious lifestyle was appealing, she couldn't tolerate living like that with him and chose to divorce him. Because of the prenuptial agreement stating no property division, she'll be returning home almost penniless. I found it out over the phone before returning home.
I'll make him pay for my flight ticket at least.
It's absurd there's no property division. Why would you agree to such terms? I was indignant, but she seemed bothered.
It's done, so it's fine. Besides, prenups are common in Brazil, and the assets are in his parents' names. Actually, he has a lot of debt.
I was infuriated by her careless attitude, so I persisted. Stop being so nonchalant about it and handle this properly.
It's fine. Once I'm back in America, I'll catch another rich guy.
I couldn't believe what she, at her age, was saying. But strangely, I found myself somewhat agreeing. It sounded like something she would say. Though, I can't believe she'd catch my own husband. Did you think Emily would come back with lots of money? I asked, seeing my husband's guilty expression.
Well, after divorcing a rich husband, it's normal to assume she'd walk away with a fortune, right? But she's penniless, and it seems like she was after my earnings.
My son and I exchanged cold glances at his brazen attitude. Your earnings, huh?
What's with that look?
Oops, I must have given him scornful eyes. Aren't you two of a kind? You were after Emily's money, weren't you?
I'd rather be with Emily, who fell for me at first sight, than with a nagging, stingy wife like you.
But you understand now, don't you? My husband bit down his lip.
Yeah, you're right. It was a lie that she fell for me at first sight. I was over the moon.
That's why you left Emily behind?
I'm the one who got left behind.
He burst out, dropping his shoulders. Why?
Because.
I don't need you to say it. I know. I sighed. That's why I told you to listen to me. You both have misunderstood. Let me tell you about my husband. My husband worked for a renowned trading company for many years, steadily climbing the ranks and receiving promotions. That's my husband George, my sister knows. About 5 years ago, he fell ill. He had caught the eye of a tyrannical boss who subjected him to harassment. Despite being promoted to department head, his smiles dwindled, his appetite lost, and he went to work every day looking visibly distressed. I couldn't bear to see him like that, so I was the one who suggested he resign. There was no need to push himself until he broke down. We could manage with some budgeting. He quit his job and has been working at a factory as a non-regular employee since then. His salary was halved, but I became a full-time employee, and our son also found a job too. We're no longer struggling financially. Although my prideful husband felt down at times, he stopped worrying after I reassured him, saying, "You've worked hard to provide for us all these years, so it's fine." With his smile back, he repeatedly thanked me. I was relieved. As long as he stayed healthy, that was all that mattered to our family. However, it seems like my husband has completely forgotten about that. I didn't intend to come across as patronizing, nor did I have any intention of blaming him. We're a married couple and I believe we should support each other. Well, at least until today.
Hearing my story, Emily got mad and stormed off, saying I'm not the same person she thought I was. It's not my fault, is it?
It's your fault, Dad.
Our son interjected before I could respond.
What's with that tone toward your father?
I'm saying it after understanding everything. Mom deserves better.
My husband flinched, unable to retort.
Well, I got angry at your high and mighty attitude. You looked down on me, telling me to wash my own lunchbox, even though I was the one earning more.
Dad, please stop.
My husband seemed so small at that moment. Or perhaps our son had grown bigger. As someone who knows you both well, I can say that you and Emily are the worst match. I thought it was a joke to call her your soulmate.
Is that so?
I saw it coming from the start. My domineering husband and my sister who is freewheeling and a female chauvinist. There was no way they could get along unless there was some ulterior motive. They were blinded by each other's non-existent wealth. So, are we getting a divorce?
No, it's just that. It's more of a misunderstanding.
Be clear.
Well, I think your attitude wasn't great either.
Dad.
Yes.
My husband flinched under our son's glare, looking pathetic. It's time to make things clear. If Emily were to come back and ask you to marry her even though you're working as a non-regular employee, would you?
Huh?
Would you be willing to live with penniless Emily?
Huh?
She's your soulmate, right? I looked straight at him. As his face looked paler, he slowly shook his head.
I'm sorry.
Hey. He's saying like that. What will you do? I called out, and awkwardly coming from the back of the room was,
Huh, Emily? You're here.
Yeah, I'm here.
My sister stormed in, causing a scene about my husband's low-paying job after finding out about it and demanding accountability. As she was shocked by the truth, my husband came home, and she has been hiding.
That's terrible, George. You were only after my money.
No, weren't you too?
If he were still earning a high salary, were you seriously planning to take him from our family? I asked my sister, who vehemently denied it.
I'll be honest. I was desperate.
What do you mean?
I have no job, no friends, and I'm feeling anxious about the future. I thought if I had my sister's husband, I'd feel secure.
I see. After divorcing and returning home, she must have been filled with anxiety, longing for stability as soon as possible. I'm your sister, so I couldn't possibly understand your feelings.
Huh?
I'm not sympathizing with you. You were about to break up a family.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Go back to our parents' house right now.
No way. I won't do that.
My sister had a strained relationship with our parents. Plus, she is infamous in our hometown, making her situation even more difficult. In a small rural town, someone who fled from a company introduced by family connections wouldn't be well received.
But you said you'd let me stay for a while.
It's not possible.
What?
I can't let my sister who tries to steal my husband. It's too risky.
I don't need George, who's just a non-regular employee. Anyway,
Even I wouldn't have bothered if you were broke.
Well, you see. I couldn't help but wonder how to deal with these immature adults. But before I could say anything, my son spoke up.
I want both of you to leave right away.
He said coldly, and the two of them swallowed hard at his words. Even with his gentle nature, my son's words carried an undeniable weight, instilling a sense of fear.
Ian, why were you laughing so hard earlier? Did you know this was going to happen?
My husband asked with a trembling voice.
I laughed because I was surprised and disgusted by my own father's shallowness.
My husband recoiled in fear. Even though he was smiling, the lack of amusement in my son's eyes was terrifying.
Dad, you can't live without Mom, yet you dare say such things.
Huh?
Mom spoils you, Dad, that's why you're still alive. Do you understand?
Huh?
My son had seen through everything. My husband's pale face turned rapidly red. He wasn't angry. He was embarrassed. After spending so many years together, I could read him like an open book.
If you understand, you should appreciate Mom. And Mom, you've been spoiling him too much.
I nodded with a wry smile. It was hard to tell who the parents were here. My son is really dependable. Once again, I felt confident in my success as a parent.
My apologies. Please forgive me.
It's not easy to forgive you. Can you understand how I felt when you mentioned divorce?
I'll wash the lunchbox.
What? Just as I was about to slap him, my son placed a hand on my husband's shoulder.
Dad, you're not serious, right?
Hey,
I decided to leave it to my trustworthy son. It was already late at night. It had been a long day. I contacted our parents and put my sister, who was suffering from jet lag, and her luggage on the overnight bus to our hometown. I wanted her to leave as soon as possible. Don't worry, with your cunning, you'll meet your next destined one soon enough. About a month has passed. My sister, who returned to our hometown, immediately called me.
I hate living in this countryside. I want to live at your place.
But that was clearly impossible, so I firmly declined. Now, she's found a job in caregiving through our parents' connections. I'm relieved, at least for now. Apparently, she had to sign a document promising not to run away again. However, after living in Brazil for so many years, she's quite naive, and plus her personality. I was worried she might cause trouble right away, but surprisingly, with her natural cheerfulness and sociability, she seems to have won over the elderly quite easily.
Being popular with the elderly won't get you anywhere. Where are the rich, handsome guys?
Oh, sister. You might have looked young in Brazil, but you're already 45. It's about time you realized that your chances are slim in the countryside. Relying on someone else to live is naive. You should start learning the skills to live on your own from now on. And show some gratitude to our parents, who have worried about you so much. No matter how much time passes, my husband never seems to improve at household chores. The laundry comes out wrinkled, he fails at cooking even when following recipes, and he manages to make a mess while cleaning. It's starting to wear me down. But I'm not going to go easy on him. Do it again. Enough is enough.
I'm sorry.
If you keep forgetting, then take notes. Don't you even know that?
Yes.
My goodness, Dad. You really have no sense.
My husband's pride is crushed by the mocking laughter of our son. But he seems to understand his position as he endures without complaint for now. His ultimate goal is packing a lunch. Considering the color and nutritional balance and packing them neatly into the designated containers is an advanced level task among household chores. He also needs to keep track of inventory in the fridge. Once he understands the challenges of being the one who prepares meals, there's no choice but to wash the lunchbox. We made a vow, didn't we? I won't let you forget that. Joy and sorrow are to be shared equally. Yes, both work and household chores are to be divided equally. Equality is a given. Couples should support each other in life.
My name is Amy. I'm a 34-year-old office worker. I've been married to Tom, a classmate from my university days, for 10 years. Actually, we don't have children yet. This is because I had a surgery due to illness when I was a child, and which has made it difficult for me to conceive. At the beginning of our marriage, my parents-in-law were looking forward to holding their grandchild soon.
Of course, it has to be a boy. He'll be the son and heir.
That's right. Amy must give birth to a boy.
My parents-in-law's family isn't a venerable one. My father-in-law is an office worker, and my mother-in-law is a typical housewife. Although my husband is the eldest son, he is always a bit absent-minded. I remember the day vividly when my parents-in-law got upset and came to my house. That was just after we told them that we were thinking neither to inherit their house nor live together. They came to our house again and again, shedding tears as they tried to persuade us, so it was quite a struggle to make them give up. However, I explained that in order to live with my in-laws, my husband would have to quit his current job and it would be difficult for him to find another job as a regular employee with the same treatment due to the recession. Despite this, my parents-in-law insisted they could introduce someone who could help him find a job and urged us to come over. My husband seemed astonished and said to them, "If you keep pushing, I'll cut ties with you." For both of them, the statement from their own son seemed to be quite tough, and the discussion about living together ended there. However, it was a different story when it came to urging grandchildren. After years passed without having children, my mother-in-law finally reached her breaking point and began persistently contacting us.
When will we ever get to hold a grandchild? We aren't getting any younger, you know. It's about time you start thinking about the future.
I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do about it. Even though I was asked, "When will you have a child?" I was the one who wanted to know the most. While our friends who got married after us were getting pregnant one after another, why couldn't we have a baby? Was it because of our unhealthy diet, or lack of exercise? Though I looked back on my habit, the reason was unclear. Recently, my husband and I went together for a consultation at a fertility clinic, but no specific cause was found. If there had been a cause, there might have been a chance of pregnancy through treatment. However, the doctor also looked at the test results and was puzzled.
There doesn't seem to be any major health issue that specifically hinders pregnancy. It might just be a matter of timing. Why don't you wait and see how it goes for a while?
Even if the doctor said so, I'm already 34. The older I get, the more difficult it is to be pregnant. When I told that, the doctor suggested an advanced treatment. However, that treatment costs a couple $100,000 per session. Whether to undergo the treatment or not eventually became a discussion with my husband. Every night as I got into bed, I've started researching about the treatment, and it often led to sleepless nights. We decided to take our time and consider whether it's really better to undergo the treatment or to continue our lives with just the two of us. However, it's not just my mother-in-law who didn't allow it. My sister-in-law, Nancy, often teamed up with my mother-in-law to speak ill of me. On that day, when I finished work early and was about to go shopping, suddenly my phone rang. It was from my sister-in-law, Nancy. "Hello?
I heard from my mom. You're having trouble having a baby, aren't you?"
"Yes, that's right."
"Hey, Tom is the heir to this house. Don't you understand how serious it is if you don't have a boy? How long are you two going to fool around? You have to start thinking seriously about the future."
"We're not fooling around. We're seriously considering it ourselves. Please don't pressure us like this. I couldn't understand why I had to be told such things. What's even more unforgivable is that all these phone calls and remarks were made when my husband wasn't around. That's why my husband had no idea he's being subjected to such heartless words from both of them. Since they kept calling repeatedly despite being at work, I told her not to call me during the day unless it was an emergency. As soon as she heard these words, my mother-in-law erupted in anger.
What are you saying? Not having an heir is an emergency. It's because you're always working so much that you can't conceive.
She yelled so loudly that people around us could hear, and they started looking at me with disapproval. That's enough. Anyway, I'm going to hang up. Feeling uneasy, I hurriedly ended the call, but it was already too late.
Can I have a moment?
I was suddenly called by my boss and we had a discussion in the conference room.
Lately, you have been getting a lot of calls during work hours. Isn't it inappropriate for everyone to keep answering personal calls while on duty?
I'm terribly sorry. I'll make sure to explain to my mother-in-law about this.
If it's an emergency, it can't be helped. But it doesn't seem like that's the case, right? If it continues, I'll have to report it to the president.
Being cautioned by my boss and looked at disapprovingly by those around me, I felt mentally exhausted. Even my colleagues with whom I had been close seemed distant, and I found myself eating lunch alone more often. Despite working diligently, I couldn't understand how things had come to this. Before I knew it, I had lost 11 pounds in weight. I had a poor complexion due to the inability to eat, and I had been feeling unwell for a while. Even the colleagues who had been distant before seemed to realize the severity of the situation and suggested taking a break from work. However, I was in no condition to even listen to their advice properly. After I got home, I sat alone in the dark room, shedding tears without even turning on the lights. My husband found me when he got home in such a state, hurried to my side.
What's wrong? What happened?
He dropped his bag and rushed over to me. Upon seeing his face, I felt reassured and suddenly burst into tears. I continued crying until my voice became hoarse, and throughout, my husband was gently patting my back. After I calmed down from crying, I told my husband everything that had happened. I explained how my mother-in-law repeatedly called me during work, urging me to have a child, and how my sister-in-law would join in, pressuring me to have a successor. I didn't hide anything, even mentioning how I received a scolding from my boss because of the frequent calls during work hours. It's a family matter, and they're my husband's family. Hearing negative comments about our own family isn't pleasant for anyone. But my husband listened to me without interrupting, until the end. I'm sorry for saying all that about your family. But I just can't take it anymore. With tears held back, I told my husband in a trembling voice, and suddenly, he pulled out his phone from his pocket.
Hey, Mom? Will you stop calling Amy from now on? What you've been doing is bullying her.
From the conversation, it was clear that the person on the phone was his mother. Hearing this, once again, she countered him with a sharp tone.
What are you talking about? I'm just trying to give you guys advice out of concern. How on earth does that equate to bullying? Amy, are you being a bit paranoid?
She refused to admit any wrongdoing and kept blaming me. Despite this, my husband stood his ground. He made it clear that matters concerning the children were between us as a couple and requested that she refrain from intervening. However, while it may be a marital issue for us, it's not just a matter between us from my mother-in-law's perspective. As the eldest son and heir of this household, my husband should be more aware, according to my mother-in-law. I didn't expect that there were still people bringing up the issue of the heir even in this era. I listened with astonishment to her words, feeling incredulous inside. As the conversations with my mother-in-law became increasingly tiresome due to the lack of understanding, my husband sighed heavily right in front of me.
Listen, Amy has been getting scolded by her boss because of you guys. Doesn't it break your heart to see Amy, who's working so diligently, being treated unfairly? Please, stop calling.
With that said, he abruptly ended the call.
Sorry for the trouble caused by my mom and sister. You can ignore their calls and texts, and feel free to block them if you want.
Thanks for speaking up for me. Yeah, I'll block them. After that day, we didn't receive any calls or texts from them. When they couldn't reach me, they started calling my husband. At first, he dealt with it casually, but as it became more troublesome, he seemed to reach his limit.
Enough is enough. I won't answer your calls anymore, and I'll block your messages.
With that, even my husband started blocking their calls and messages. The two who couldn't accept it showed up at our house later, banging on the front door and shouting loudly.
Hey Tom, Amy? We are here, open up quickly.
We've come all the way to visit, so why can't you even welcome us properly? What kind of upbringing did you have? I'd like to see your parents' faces.
While they criticize us for not opening the front door, isn't it more uncouth to shout loudly at 6 a.m. on a holiday? My husband was awakened by the commotion, and was quite angry, not only because he had just woken up but also because his mother and sister had been making noise outside since the morning.
Enough already. Do you know what time it is? If you make any more noise, I'll call the police.
Just mentioning the word, police, might make many people hesitate and stop their harassment, wouldn't it? However, even when they heard that, they didn't leave. Instead, they showed a stance that they wouldn't leave until they were let in the house. Thinking that it would be a considerable nuisance to the neighbors, we reluctantly unlocked the door. As the door opened, they casually kicked off their shoes and barged into the room.
What do you think you're doing? Ignoring calls and messages, is this how you treat your real parents?
Exactly. It's so disrespectful of you as a daughter-in-law, especially when I came to share the news of my pregnancy.
What? Pregnant? With that, Nancy took an ultrasound picture out of her bag and showed it off in front of me. Nancy, who got married last year, had conceived a baby with James. My mother-in-law proudly mentioned it was her first grandchild and boasted about it to me. Congratulations. Take care of yourself during this important time, I said. Nancy smirked and said,
You must be feeling jealous that I got pregnant first, right?
I didn't particularly feel jealous, but there was a slight tinge of envy. However, since many friends who married after me were already giving birth, I had grown accustomed to being overtaken. Still, Nancy's constant boasting with a smirk on her face didn't exactly warm my heart. Probably Nancy's pregnancy had shifted my in-laws' focus. My husband's mother had simply stopped bombarding him with incessant calls. However, my mother-in-law seemed a bit disappointed that the baby turned out to be a girl, as she had her heart set on a boy initially. Nevertheless, I think it was happy that they had come to see us. When my husband expressed this sentiment to them, my usually opinionated mother-in-law fell silent. We hadn't given up either. We kept going to the hospital repeatedly, continuing with the treatments. Sometime later, we knew that Nancy had given birth. Looking at the photos, the baby had fair skin and sparkling eyes, undeniably adorable. After things settled down, family members gathered so my husband and I attended with a gift to celebrate. Seeing the baby peacefully sleeping in the corner of the crib, I couldn't help but smile. Oh, how adorable she is.
Her eyes look just like Nancy's.
Tom remarked. James approached us while we were conversing and asked if we wanted to hold the baby. Holding the baby with unfamiliar hands, I was first surprised by how light she was. Watching her sleep so peacefully in my husband's arms, I wondered if we would feel such endearment if we had our own child. At the dinner table, the conversation naturally turned to the baby, and once again, our situation was brought up by relatives.
You've been married for years now. Why haven't you had children? Being parents is what makes you complete. You need to become parents soon to reassure your own parents.
Such remarks pierced my heart, leaving me feeling uneasy. As I struggled with the conversation, Tom, who was sitting next to me, responded.
That's true, but having a child is a blessing. We want to be well prepared whenever the baby decides to come.
As my husband responded with a smile, they didn't pursue the matter further. But, 2 weeks after meeting Nancy's baby, a miracle happened to us. Surprisingly, we found out that I was pregnant. Despite years of struggling with infertility, both my husband and I were overjoyed at the long-awaited pregnancy. However, since it was still early in the pregnancy and I was not yet in the stable phase, we decided to not inform our parents until the stable phase came. Shortly after learning about the pregnancy, morning sickness set in, and I experienced several days of poor health. I couldn't manage household chores properly, and even going to work became challenging. When I consulted my boss about it, they suggested taking a break until my health improved. Considering my long history of treatment, those around me refrained from urging me to go to work. Grateful for their consideration, I decided to take a break until my health improved. My husband, despite being busy with work, actively helped with the household chores.
Are you okay, Amy? I got something light that you might be able to eat. Do you think you can eat it?
Thank you. I can't believe how nauseous I feel.
It's tough. I'll do my best to make you feel more comfortable.
Thank you. My husband was very kind, taking care of me and actively assisting with household chores despite being busy with his own work. He did everything without complaint, allowing me to rest assured and relax during this difficult time. 4 months into the pregnancy. The baby was growing well, and my belly had started to swell slightly. Just when I was about to inform my parents, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law caused a huge incident. It happened when my husband and I were visiting our hometown together. Since my parents' house was in another prefecture, we drove for 2 hours one way. Dad, Mom, I have a baby in my belly now. It's the long-awaited pregnancy I've been waiting for. When my parents learned about my pregnancy, they were overjoyed. Especially my mother, who knew how much I had struggled, shed tears of joy. Although she hadn't mentioned it, I'm sure my mother had been eagerly awaiting a grandchild.
Congratulations. Take care of yourself during this crucial time.
Thank you. We plan to visit again when it's time for giving birth. We stayed overnight and returned home the next morning. When I tried to unlock the front door, our nosy neighbor, Mr. Ollivander, from down the street, showed up. He wasn't a bad person, but once he got involved, he tended to stick around, making him a bit of a hassle. As I looked at his face, he seemed troubled about something.
Can I have a word?
Sure, what is it?
From your house, the crying of a baby was quite loud yesterday. Are you taking care of it properly?
Huh? A baby? What are you talking about, Mr. Ollivander? My baby is still in my belly. The baby hasn't been born yet.
Huh? But it was really loud yesterday, and Mrs. Sean and I were worried. It seemed to be coming from inside your house.
Not understanding what he meant, I decided to open the house and check the rooms. There was no baby born yet in our house, so it must have been a misunderstanding on Mr. Ollivander's part.
Hey Amy, it's urgent. Come over here.
What's wrong? Wait, what is this? In the middle of the living room, there was a baby lying on a futon. The baby looked unwell, with a full diaper emitting a foul smell. Wait, isn't this Nancy's baby? I recognized the baby. It was the girl born to Nancy. But why was she sleeping here? There were many questions, but at the moment, we needed to call an ambulance and the police. My husband and I made calls, and within about 10 minutes, both the ambulance and the police arrived. The baby was quickly taken away by the ambulance, and during that time, my husband and I were asked by the police. Mr. Ollivander, who claimed to have heard the crying yesterday, also participated in the police inquiry.
Was it around 2 p.m. yesterday? I saw 2 women entering this house. One of them was carrying a baby, so I assumed it was yours. The crying was quite loud, echoing outside.
We left for my parents' house yesterday around 10 a.m. Besides, as you saw, our baby hasn't been born yet. Those 2 women were probably my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. To be sure, we tried calling my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but couldn't reach them. So, my husband called Nancy's husband. Unexpectedly, we got shocking news. Nancy and my mother-in-law were apparently on a trip to South Korea together.
Nancy mentioned that our daughter was supposed to be with you, Amy. That's why I didn't make any confirmation calls. I never imagined this would happen.
They probably assumed we'd be back that day, so she left the baby. They never expected us not to return during the day. I quickly told him the hospital information and he said he would head there immediately. After explaining the situation to the police, they said they would ask my mother-in-law and her daughter upon their return and left my house. After the police left, anger began to well up inside naturally. I couldn't forgive leaving their child alone in such a room just because they wanted to have fun. My husband and I headed to the hospital where the baby was transported. The doctor informed us that while the baby was weak, there were no life-threatening issues, and she could likely go home in 2 to 3 days. Oh, thank goodness. I was so worried about what might have happened.
Amy, Tom, I'm truly sorry for what happened. Nancy's actions led to a terrible incident.
No, we're just relieved that nothing serious happened. However, there are still lingering mysteries. One of them is how they managed to break into our home. Neither my husband nor I have given out spare keys to anyone. How could they have possibly gained access?
Regardless, we need to change the locks as soon as possible. I'll contact a locksmith to come over.
Yeah, let's do that. But, will only changing the locks truly solve the problem? As long as they know where our house is, they might come back again. Fortunately, the house was company-owned, and we've been considering buying our own home when we have kids. I should discuss it with my husband and we should consider moving to a different location until the house is ready. Sometime later, I received a call from James. He informed me that upon their return to Japan, they were immediately taken into police custody for questioning. Apparently, they had assumed that I would take care of her baby, so they left at home. They never expected that we weren't supposed to come back. They were taken in by the police on suspicion of child abandonment. However, they seemed unwilling to accept responsibility.
I'm not guilty. Amy is the one at fault. She didn't take care of her in my place. I'm innocent.
Exactly. We never thought they would leave the house unattended. They didn't inform us beforehand. They are at fault too.
They persisted in blaming me for not taking care of the baby, insisting they had done nothing wrong. Even the police officers conducting the inquiry were astonished by their selfish opinions. As for how they managed to enter my house, it turned out that during a previous visit, my mother-in-law found a key in the entrance. Then, she secretly took it and had a copy made without my knowledge. Assuming I had simply misplaced the key, I hurriedly had a spare made. I never imagined they would secretly duplicate the key. In addition to child abandonment, they were arrested for unlawful entry into the residence. Later, my father-in-law and James came to our place to apologize for what they had done. However, as long as we stayed here, there was no doubt they would come back again. You can't live here with peace of mind as it is.
Yeah, maybe it's best to move out as a result of this.
With that in mind, we decided to move. Luckily, we found a new company housing soon, and we moved there. Moving while pregnant was tough for me, but we managed with the help of our parents and relatives. It was a short period until the new house was built, but the fear of they coming back was unbearable. After the move, sometime later, my mother-in-law called. It seemed that she and my sister-in-law had come to the previous house, but it was after we had already moved out, so they called angrily.
What's the meaning of moving without even informing us? We were planning to visit.
I didn't ask you to come. Don't you have something else to say? After causing such an incident, shouldn't you apologize to me?
That's not our concern. It's your fault for not telling us you'd be away.
To still claim innocence at this point was beyond belief. I was not just angry but also bewildered. I see. Well, we'll never see eye to eye. Then, goodbye.
Wait. There's something important I need to discuss with you today.
What is it?
Both Nancy and I have been kicked out by your father-in-law, and we have nowhere else to go. Nancy might lose custody, and we won't even get to see the baby. We're homeless now. So, can you let us stay with you?
What? It seems that they were cut off by my father-in-law and brother-in-law and lost the place to live. They tried to seek help from us and went to the house where they used to live, but it was already abandoned. They must have been calling out of desperation. However, I couldn't bring myself to live with people who could cause such an incident without any remorse. I'm sorry, but I can't live with you guys after what happened. I'm about to give birth soon, and I want to spend my time peacefully. Having you both around would disrupt that peace. Goodbye.
Wait a minute.
After hanging up, I blocked their calls and messages, including my sister-in-law's. When they couldn't reach me, they bombarded my husband with calls, asking to live with us. However, my husband made it clear that we couldn't accommodate them either. With nowhere to go, they seemed completely stunned. Later, they ended up in an old apartment, juggling multiple jobs to get by. However, they struggle with interpersonal relationships wherever they go and constantly changing jobs. Also, they're tight on money and they argue almost every day. On the other hand, I welcomed my long-awaited baby into the world. Holding my child in my arms fills me with indescribable love and warmth. I'm sure that there will be challenges. I am determined to work together with my husband to make our child happy. How was today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time.